Anyone who sees Superman cannot escape how easily identifiable he is with Christ, especially when he goes up into space, stands over Earth, and does that with his cape, floated. You can't help but say, oh, Jesus.
Hey, Siku, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to have you here today because you are a comic book artist, storyteller, dream weaver, visionary, legend.
It's good to be here.
I'm loving your studio there, man. Is this in your house?
Part of the house is garage in the garden, and I converted it into a studio.
And what's that in the background there? These are comic covers?
Classic comic covers in the last 80 years. So you've got the first Superman cover, you've got the first female superhero cover, which is Wonder Woman. You've got the first Batman. Yeah.
Keyboard for when you want to just put out tunes. Mate, it is so good to have you here today. You know, you're a kind of an absolute expert in this field. You know, you've worked with Marvel, Sega, BBC, the 2000 AD comics. You spent a long time drawing for the Judge Dredd comic. Is that right? For 2000 AD?
Yes, I did that for much of my professional life. As a kid growing up, I never imagined I would be drawing Judge Dredd. Yeah. You know, reading Alan Moore, you know, his Judge Dredd, reading, you know, all those great guys, John Wagner, you know, Carlos Esquerra, and then Ron Smith, and I'm drawing with these guys. You've got to be kidding me. But yeah, it's great. It's great meeting your heroes, and then you become like them. And you got other people say, Siku. But you never see yourself that way. That's the strange thing, especially with your family around you saying, you ain't nothing. My daughter saying you're boring. You're old. Okay, thanks a lot.
You're also a man of faith, you're a Christian, and you used some of those skills you had over here to create the manga Bible, to tell the story of Jesus and the Bible as a sort of graphic novel, which is just amazing work. And look, I wanted to talk today about our culture's obsession with superheroes. And there's nobody else on the planet I would rather talk to about this than you. Like, you are the man, this is the air you breathe, this is the world you're in. And it's just struck me, this is such a cultural phenomena of our age, the sort of the superhero story. You know, consistently for the last 10, 20 years, we've just bang, bang, bang had superhero stories, and they're consistently the highest budget, highest grossing movies that come out. And look, I just want to talk, why is this? Why are we as a people, we as a culture today so obsessed with superheroes? What's going on?
The truth is, we always wanted to see superheroes on screen. The screen is the ultimate achievement in terms of consummate art, because it brings together all sorts of skills. You know, the craftsperson, the designer, the writer, the actor, the dancer, the musician. So this is like the apex in terms of art creation. It's going and watching a Hollywood blockbuster. I'm not saying it's the best of all the crafts. I'm just saying it brings together everything. So people want to see their stories told, ultimately told on the silver screen. And one of the reasons why we've had a resurgence of the the superhero genre is because now we can do it. We couldn't do it before. So you've seen all the funny stuff we've seen in the 80s, Spider-Man movies, you know, in the 80s. You've seen some often said, it's atrocious. We just couldn't do it right? But now that we can, especially with Marvel, especially with someone like Kevin Feige, who understands comic books. And one of the things that Kevin Feige does, because Kevin Feige didn't have this idea of a Marvel sphere, like a Marvel universe, where one film leads on to the other for the next 10 years. That wasn't his idea. That came from the fans. But because Kevin Feige himself, he's a fanboy. So what you have is this dynamic relationship between the fandom, who understand this genre because they live and they breathe it, and you have the ultimate producer, who is a fanboy exalted to producer status. So he has this dialogue with them, and it creates a synergy. I call it diffused wisdom, where the masses consume stuff and they respond to what you're consuming. After the first Iron Man, people just exploded enthusiasm. And they suggested that there should be a crossover. It never happened before, where you have a crossover of the universes. So Iron Man gets into Captain America's universe. It happens in the comic books, but never happened on screen. So what you have, watching Marvel for the first time, we are seeing what we read in our comic books. Exactly what we have there, we're seeing on screen, the same language. So when you see Spider-Man, it's Tobey Maguire, when he puts his Spider-Man outfit, dumps it into a dumpster, into a bin, a trash bin. And we all remember seeing that same frame when we were kids. It's like, no! But in the end, the superhero genre is the oldest archetype that we have. So we go all the way back to Gilgamesh. So we're talking the same story, which is about how human beings can be uber, as how they can be enhanced, how they can be meta-humans. And the only means of achieving that meta-human status, and it's almost as though we know this is not all that we should be. It's almost as though we know that we were not meant to look the way we are. Like we know that there's something missing. So the older stories is about how can we be more than what we are? And that's what the entire story of Gilgamesh is. Gilgamesh, Enkill, who is his partner, they go about doing stuff. That's Captain America and Iron Man, pretty much the same story. Ultimately, the way the ancients saw this was the way you can get to be uber, superior than what you are now is to join with the gods. Or if you're a king or you're an emperor or you're a head priest, you became a demigod. That is what all human beings want, that demigod status. And we get to taste it watching Batman and Superman. We get to be Tony Stark. Who doesn't want to be Tony Stark? Who doesn't want to be Tony Stark? I want to be Iron Man, and I want to be Tony Stark too. You get to acquire demigod status.
Why do we get that part where we want to be demigods? This idea of a normal human being becomes something more. What's that? What's going on there?
Well, it all goes back to lost glory, Adam and Eve falling from their first state, and becoming less than what they were. It's almost like we wear clothes, and Adam and Eve, of course, were naked, and then they were clothed. It's almost as though we wear clothes. We don't just wear clothes because of the elements. We wear clothes because we are ashamed of something. Again, this is what angst is about. Angst is not just about fear. Angst is also about guilt on a more primal, fundamental level. But it's not just about guilt or shame. It's also a knowledge that we are more. So it's almost as though these clothes are a covering glory. So one of the things about story is that it accords us a bottomless language. And one of the reasons why we have stories to solve problems. So we have these questions: who am I? Why am I? What am I? It's like a fish in water asking, why is it wet? But you can't answer those questions using rationale. You can only answer those questions using story. So like a child's born, the first thing that child needs is warmth, love, food. The second thing that child needs is stories. You find that's almost as though they're breathing air when they say, tell me a story, and their eyes start to sparkle and they begin to wonder. It's almost as though you're fulfilling something that's intrinsic to what it means to be a human being. No one can quite tell you why that's the case. You can only begin to wrestle with that when you accept that there's a spirituality in the human being. I read books written, books about stories, academic books written about stories by story professionals, academics, scholars alike. And if they never wrestle with the spiritual dimension, they will always be anemic when it comes to stories, because they can't quite explain to you why all the stories seem to be the same. And Professor Campbell talked about this, the hero with 1,000 faces.
Yeah.
Everything is about angst. That is, why am I here? What am I doing here? Where did I come from? Where am I going to?
Yeah.
So all these fables, myths, legends, fairy tales are designed so that we have the capacity, linguistically speaking, we have the capacity to begin to wrestle with it. Because without these stories, we can't. You can't wrestle with these issues using rationale, using logic. It's far beyond logic. You need deeper and more expansive language. That's why we love superheroes. Because in the end, superheroes are talking about glory lost and glory to be retained or to be regained. That's what these stories are telling us without us knowing. All creation is yearning and aching and crying for the unveiling of the Son of God. That's what this stuff is about.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This, at the heart, at the beating heart of stories are spiritual questions about what's wrong with the world, what's the solution. You mentioned Campbell there. That was his big point in Hero with 1,000 Faces, wasn't it? I came to that book like lots of other people because I think George Lucas said, if you're going to read, one book to understand stories, and what inspired me with Star Wars, it's Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces, and he just walks through the repeated cycles in stories, particularly then with the kind of protagonist or the hero or the solution. Like what is it that's going to fix the world?
Absolutely.
It's the hero. It's the hero is the thing that fixes the world.
Absolutely.
It's interesting how when we fast forward to when did lots of the kind of Marvel and new wave superheroes begin to emerge? I mean, lots of that seemed to spring out of kind of World War II. People had really stared into the brokenness of the world, the brokenness of maybe humanity, and what are the answers? How do we begin to deal with that? And sure, there are going to be political answers, sure there are technological answers, but when it comes to story, well, what sprung up out of all the angst and pain and hurt of World War II? Well, it was superheroes, right? It was Superman, it was Batman, and that I find that really fascinating.
Isn't it ironic that they're all written by Jewish boys?
Yeah.
Isn't it ironic? And so that like with Superman, what what the writers of Superman tried to do? They thought of Moses and they thought of Uberizing Moses. You see, when you take the archetypal hero and you Uberize them, you get Jesus. Can't help it. Can't help it. I'm sorry. So they Uberized Moses, and what did we get? We got Jesus. Can't help it. Anyone who sees Superman cannot escape how easily identifiable he is with Christ, especially when he goes up into space, stands over Earth, and does that with his cape, floated. You can't help but say, oh, Jesus. Can't help it. It's written in our DNA. Jesus Christ is Lord is written in our DNA. You can't help it. But there's something beautiful happens though, right? So Superman gets to be really successful, breaking all kinds of records for book sales, comic book sales. And so other publishers are thinking, okay, how can we get in on the act? So they try all sorts of stuff, the Phantom, this and that and the other. Nothing quite works until someone, Bob Kane, and his writing partner, Bill Finger, by the way, a genius writer. They stumble upon, how about if we try the opposite, right? Let's flip it. So you have Superman, the man of the day, right? How about if we flip it and we do a creature of the night? So you have the sun god and then you have the moon god. So they come up with Batman. And guess what happens? Presto. So you get Superman and Batman rise to the top. Everything else gets to fight amongst themselves for who gets second, whatever, right? But Batman's when they rise to the top. Well, guess what? Look at Batman and Superman. See what's happening with Batman and Superman. Superman is a story of science. There's no magic here. He comes from Krypton. He gets to Earth. We know why he gets his superpowers. He gets it because of the effect that yellow sun has on him, right? So that's science. He's someone of reason, of rationale. He's someone of the day, and he falls in love with the princess of Metropolis, Lois Lane. Now, go to the flip side, which is Batman, the man of the night. He's not a man of science, he's a man of myth and legend. He's the bat, right? When he designs his entire visual, so when you see him, you don't think he's a man. You think he's a manifestation of your nightmares, right? There is no science here. There's just myth, there's legend, there's fear. While Superman brings justice, Batman brings vengeance. Batman is not about justice. It's about vengeance. He wants to avenge what happened to him as a child. And that same thing that happens to everybody else. He wants to bring vengeance to those who evade justice. So you have two very different paradigms, but it's something more, something more. He's not a lover of the virtuous princess. He's a lover of women of vice. He loves Selina Kyle. Selina Kyle is a prostitute, at least in Batman Year One, Frank Miller's Batman, Selina Kyle is a prostitute. He fancies Poison Ivy. And a close second to Selina Kyle is Callie and Talia, the daughter of Ruth Gall, who literally stabs him in the back in Dark Knight Rising, the third in the trilogy of the Dark Knight series. Amazing parallels. Well, now here's the goodie right here. They're both Jesus Christ. You see, it's very easy for people to just read. They can very intuitively read Jesus into Superman. That's easy. But looking at Batman and reading Jesus into Batman, that's a little bit difficult.
Show us how we read him into Superman for us, just real quick.
Okay. So, Superman comes from a different planet. And he gets to be more human than we are. That's what Bruce Wayne says. When they're talking about Batman in Justice League, I think, where they try to resurrect him, Bruce Wayne says that even though he's an alien, he's more human than any of us. And when I heard that, I said, oh, we're talking about Jesus Christ. Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ is an alien, right? He gets to be human. And in becoming human, this alien is teaching us how to be truly human, right? So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two, he's a child of promise. The whole reason why he is sent to Earth is so that he can bring redemption, so he can show us what we are truly capable of doing, right? So he's a child of promise. Three, Kal-El, that's what he's called in heaven. And when he comes to Earth, he gets to be called Clark Kent. So he comes to Earth, he gets to be called Jesus. Jesus is called something else up there. Yeah. Now to Gotham, to Batman. So I see Superman as a god, as God of the sun, but I see Batman as God of the moon. See, before we became Jesus' bride, we were the whore. We were Selina Kyle. This was central to our stories. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. That essentially is a story of salvation. In the same way, it's God himself meets humanity. God meets girl, God loses girl, God gets girl back. The problem with the Batman story is that story is truncated. So it's boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy loses girl, boy loses girl. But it's like a needle stuck on that record. Boy loses girl. That's hip hop. That's blues. This is essentially this is Batman's story, where Batman is stuck. And I call this the tragedy, the greatest tragedy to befall the hero, like James Bond, for example, where he never gets over West Berlin. They can't get over Selina Kyle. In Jesus' case, falling in love with a woman who loves him, needs him, wants him. She knows she needs him and wants him, just like Selina Kyle. But just as likely as it is for her to give him a kiss, on the lips, she's just as likely to stab him in the back, which she does. And the church, well, I say the church, humanity is not just capable of doing it, they did it. He comes unto his own. His own knew him not. But it's not just they knew him not and rejected him, they killed him. Just like Selina Kyle tries to kill Batman, or Talia actually stabs him in the back and actually almost kills him. This is the story of Jesus Christ as Batman. A dysfunctional relationship with humanity. Loving humanity. Humanity hates him, but he gives his life just so he can save it. Where Jesus Christ departs from Batman is that in the end, he's able to save the whole. It's unbelievable how everything works is about the gospel. You can't make it up. Also, you have a dysfunctional lover, As when I say dysfunctional lover, this is I'm talking about Jesus Christ himself, where he loves something that will kill him. He loves something that will kill him. This is profound stuff. But the reason why we don't get to intuitively identify Batman with Jesus is because we struggle with the notion of the God of darkness. See, Jesus Christ will be Lord over all, in all things will be submitted at his feet. It's dark and light. He's God of the light and he's God of the dark. And that's what we struggle with.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? A lot of people think the Bible is going to be all sunshine and rainbows till you read it. And you think this is a gritty story. This is gritty. It's dark. We're recording this coming up to the Easter weekend. I'm looking again at those passages. This is dark, right? You've got betrayal from best friends. You've got, the guys, the religious guys that are supposed to be the kind of trusted goodies. They're off plotting murder, lying, setting up these false trials. Everybody is just against this hero. And then eventually when you get in Matthew to the account there with the cross, I mean, Matthew just keeps punching at the different, betrayed, abandoned, spat on, beaten, mocked. This is a dark, gritty story. And I think that's what's fascinating, isn't it? When you see the grittiest superheroes and people say, oh, well, that, how are you going to reconcile that with the whole idea of that being Jesus? But actually you're saying that that is the gospel. The gospel comes into the darkness, the grit.
Absolutely. And it goes further, because when you examine the superhero, you always examine the superhero's spouse. The superhero's spouse is integral to the success of the superhero. Whether it's Iron Man or Superman or Batman, they can't get over first love, who is a dysfunctional character, as in Vesperlin or Selina Clark. Can't get over it. So the nature of story, it's impenetrable unless you have a supernatural or spiritual dimension. And there's a reason for this. That is Jesus Christ himself as Logos is the essence of story. So Jesus Christ himself defines existence. He holds all things and he keeps all things, but it's more than that, because we think in a materialistic way. So we're thinking he's holding all atoms together. No. It's more fundamental. He holds all concepts together. The only reason why the universe exists is because concepts hold the universe together. Jesus Christ defines concept. Jesus Christ defines story, but it's more than that. Jesus Christ is story itself. That's why human beings can't help but define him. When they write stories, it's about Jesus. When you write about Buddha, it's about Jesus. I don't care what you're trying to do. I don't even care if you hate his guts. When you write, you can't lie. That's how it is with story writing. You can't help but say Jesus Christ is Lord. Yeah. Can't help it. So you have the strongest opponents to the story of Jesus saying, well, it's a copy of all the other myths. And so when you look at all the other myths, it's like, that makes sense. But then here's the problem. Everybody knows that's legend. No one's going to say Jesus is legend. Like Jordan Peterson recently finally confessed. You have myth and you have Jesus Christ who's reality, and you join those two things together. That's what's happening.
Look, we need to wrap up here. This has been so. I wish we could keep on talking. But in summary, we're saying that, since the beginning of time, we've told these superhero stories. And really, it's a reflection of us looking out at the world, coming up with asking spiritual questions, acknowledging good, evil, truth, justice, and a need for change, rescue, salvation. And we create these heroes as the sort of answer. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that every time we read a comic, watch a superhero film, that actually we're just longing for Jesus. Is that right? Every time you watch a movie, every time you read a comic book, every time you see anything, high adventure, fantasy, can't help it. It's always about Jesus. You can't help it, guys.
writers, viewers, consumers, whatever. You can't help it though.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Let's do this again. Let's talk again soon.
Yeah, again, let's talk about bad guys, Joker. Let's talk about Two-Face. Oh, awesome stuff.
I used to have this Two-Face statue in my room when I was a kid. I loved it. It was like the coolest thing I owned. He used to sit there staring at me. It was freaky.
Awesome.
Mate, thanks for joining us.
Great talking to you, by the way. And I hope your viewers will find this useful, inspiring, and maybe even seeing Jesus as more awesome than they thought he was.